two, one. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Just Context, episode 11. Um, I know we left off talking about some things that I know we definitely want to continue on, especially based on I would say what's going on in the world in different things, especially because I have kids and things that I find myself doing that I'm considered guilty pleasure of. I do remember when we left off last time, last week, just to make sure that we were talking about the social dilemma, correct? Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so we had brought up the social dilemma. I just told everybody to go watch it. If you have not watched the social dilemma as of right now, please do not listen. Like, I'm about to spoil some stuff.
Spoil.
I try my hardest not to spoil, a lot, but we really gotta discuss this. Um, so yeah, come back in like 20 minutes.
Well, I mean, I would say this, and a lot of people, especially in the world, have been on this because, especially if anybody would have went back, and I'm gonna use some political terms, about Cambridge Analytica because I'm not sure if anybody's even know anything about Cambridge Analytica. How Facebook was technically used in a sense to kind of target people on how they voted. So I think the interest is being piqued, but what the documentary will do is open a door that when everybody was peeking through the window, it's just going to open the door and be like, look, this is what's being done to you. And I'm not even going to lie to you. Like, I mean, it brought me to a place that makes me even evaluate myself in so many different ways based on how I said the smallest thing, my device. You know?
Your phone?
Yeah. Yeah, my device is not just my phone because my computer, I guess, will be considered guilty pleasure as well, right? I do have my tablet. If anybody would have seen me, I'd pull my iPad out right now. My cell phone, and technically, yeah, it makes me evaluate a lot in so many different ways. But I'll let you continue.
Well, okay. So this documentary kind of opened our eyes. As you said, it opened the door. To me, it was like opening the floodgates. It was it was explaining the what is behind the information that social media collects from us. It was explaining how things are chosen for us because of our social media activity, um, and essentially how we are quote unquote the product. Um, we don't use social media for free. Essentially, as it was explaining, we are the product. We are the thing that companies and corporations will pay social media platforms to get to. Um, so the different ways that this is done is basically, you know, AI and technology just looking at what we do online. It monitors our every movement. So the information that we already know is collected by, social media platforms. It's kind of like, all right, yeah, whatever. Like they collect, information on us. But to the extent that they go, it's almost like, the depiction that was in the documentary was like people assigned almost to every single one of us to watch what we do, what we watch, how long we scroll past certain things, how long we watch certain videos, um, what X we're going to look up in the middle of the night. um, it's trained to see where we're at in life, what we're feeling at that very moment, what we want to, make us happy. Are we depressed? Okay, do you want some kind of food? And I mean, I've seen this so many times where I think a lot of us have been just like, in conversation, and all of a sudden we're, flooded with ads of something that we just spoke about on the phone, or we're just texting about, or we're just looking up on Google, or whatever the case is, right? Um, So the extent that this documentary goes to explain exactly how this information is used and how it's almost I guess a perverse reaction to how they intended social media to be. You know, the intent behind it was not what it is today. And every little thing that was made on social media platforms was it was almost like it took a life of its own, because of the technology. You know, the technology behind social media platforms at this point, according to the people in the documentary, it is uncontrollable at this point. It's picked up literally a mind of its own, and it's not doing what it was, you know, first intended to do. It just has kind of grown on its own. Um, so in that we have, you know, companies that benefit from watching us and watching our every move. And, you know, I've been seeing people's commentary on the documentary these past few days, and, you know, certain people are like, well, you know, they're basically making it seem like there's no solution for it. And essentially, it's not necessarily that there's no solution for it, it's that what the solution is going to be hard to get to, which is regulation. We have a situation where we need to regulate the information that is given to companies. We need to regulate how much people can dig into our lives and how much people can watch and monitor and see, on a regular basis. And no one has done that yet because the law is not caught up to the technology. And that's consistently been something where the law is behind. It's behind on the internet. It's behind on technology. You know, when certain problems come up is when, you know, I guess it's addressed. But for the most part, the law kind of sits back and watches things spiral out of control, and then they say, hey, maybe we should do something about it.
Janelle, can I take a pause for a second? Um, because just so I can take back, I do know that the number one commodity when it comes to the world right now is data, right? It's far outgrowing oil at this point, and the information that we have is on us. It's crazy to think that we're in an age where people are still fighting poverty when companies are making billions of dollars off just our eyes, our visual, our mental state alone. That alone is just so far gone. And to think of it, if they would even make the attempt to pay us as individuals what we technically would have been deserved, right? For how much money they're making of it. Think about if you go on Wish, I'm using Wish, or if you ever go on Amazon and shop for something. And I'm talking about not to buy something just window shop. You know, thinking about, hey, I want this computer. There's a 90% chance that when you finish looking at that computer and you go back to like Facebook or any one of your little pages, they start popping back up. And it's almost endearing to the fact that it's like, hey, wait, I didn't tell you that I wanted to see this again. And you see it because I'm talking about from guilt, because I do know that Facebook owns Instagram along as Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, right? And you will realize every time you search for something and you go on any one of those platforms, automatically they're basically pinpointing what you just looked at. So it is crazy. But I'll let you continue.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the extent of the information that people have gathered on individuals, that, I mean, not people, corporations, companies have gathered on individuals is kind of scary. We all knew that they were monitoring us, right? We all knew that. But the fact that public and private corporations and companies are the ones that are paying for this information, and not just our government, right? Because, I mean, we all know the government is monitoring us, right? I'm not sure the extent of to which the government is monitoring us or was monitoring us before social media platforms became a thing. But I think that generally speaking, I don't know. personally, I'm a lot more comfortable with the government monitoring citizens than private and public corporations. Like, at least the government has a responsibility to citizens and a responsibility to the people that it governs. Um, Private and public corporations have no responsibility to anyone but themselves. And to me, that makes them scarier than the government monitoring me. Because at the end of the day, we don't know the extent and we don't know what they are doing with our information besides, hey, let me sell you things and hey, look at this product and hey, look at this service. Um, at this point, we're really just being auctioned off. Like, we may not be prostitutes, but we might as well be. um, so yeah, the documentary did a really good job at explaining that we do need regulation for this issue because it's not just a matter of us being sold to the highest bidder. It's also a matter of what social media platforms and AI and the technology behind it is choosing to show us. So they made the example in the documentary that, one person with certain interests and certain friends in a certain part of the country might be seeing, one thing when they log on to social media, and then a completely different individual with different interests and different friends and family and profession and in a different part of the country is seeing a completely different thing when they log on to social media. Um, Now, the problem that they, painted the picture of with this situation is that we all inherently believe that what we are seeing and experiencing and doing is what everyone else is experiencing and seeing and doing as well, because we're all, here sharing this country or this world, But when you have different factions of society um, seeing completely different information. Whereas, again, part of the example was like one faction seeing stuff about conspiracy theories and like, the earth is flat and XYZ. And then another faction is seeing, um, round earth and whatever other interests they share, right? And then we're both arguing with each other like, how can you be this stupid? How can you be this stupid to believe that the earth is round when it's really flat? Like, look at all of this information. How are you not seeing this information just like I am? And at the end of the day, that's exactly what the technology is for. It's made to show us what it thinks we'll be interested in, and they base that off of our internet movements, right? So we're all completely seeing different things when we log on to the internet and use social media platforms, and then we're all constantly arguing with each other over the things that we're seeing and assuming that the other person is seeing or has access to, or whatever the case is. Even YouTube, I mean, the suggested videos is a perfect example of this, because my suggested videos will never be the same as your suggested videos. So when you're constantly seeing videos about your specific interests and not about anything else, it's easy to believe that this is the only information out there. It takes a certain, person to say, hey, let me put the work into actually figuring out what else is out there. And the majority of us don't have that time, don't really care to put the effort into it, have so many other things going on in life. That's just not what's going to happen, right? Unless you're, potentially in a profession that requires that. Or you just, have a specific interest in saying, hey, let me be objective, right? So the part that was a little bit scary to me was the conversation about a potential civil war, and how it's already assumed at this point that social media platforms have caused other wars or I shouldn't say wars, but battles, other violent attacks, etc., in other parts of the world. So we're not speaking strictly United States right now. I think that when it gets down to that, it's becoming a hell of a lot more important to discuss. It's becoming something that we need to pay attention to because, as they said, this technology is kind of on its own at this point. There's no controlling this at this point, and there's no putting the I just there's no putting it back in the box, to put it that way. There's no going backwards. I mean, we have social media, we have the internet. There's no saying, hey, let's just all in the entire world just agree to not use this. This thing that makes our lives easier, this thing that gives us, quote unquote information, this thing that helps us with connectivity to each other. So it's really a matter at this point of moving forward towards regulation because we're not getting rid of it. It's not going to happen, right? Unless we move towards a dictatorship, and that's ridiculous. So, so at this point, as I said, it's really about regulation. Now, the problem here is that you have billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporations and individuals at this point that do not want regulation because they are benefiting from the information and the data that they're receiving. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, this is going to be a huge struggle. And I think that this documentary is something that every individual should watch because I think although we're not really disciplined individuals, watching this will make you second guess the things that you do. I've already heard people saying, like, I'm not giving my children phones until they get to a certain age, maybe like 16. I think that as individuals and as society, we can curb the negative effects of social media. Some of those also include, people looking at themselves through filtered lenses and feeling like I'm not good enough, which we've seen causes depression and other mental health issues, which we've seen caused, basically an entire generation going under the knife. These things, I think that we need to put effort into curbing and put effort into fixing the situation. So, I mean, I know I watched it and it was kind of like, all right, I hear you. This is, kind of tough to do without social media. And I'm not suggesting that at all. And I don't think that the documentary itself was suggesting that at all either. It's not really about stopping it. As I said, you can't put it back in the box. It's already out. It's really just about monitoring and disciplining yourself and your children and moving forward with the knowledge that the documentary and the people in the documentary, which were the people who made this technology, were giving.
Yeah. I would say that, the documentary did unpack a lot because when you talk about putting it back in the box, no one technically wants to put it back in the box. That is a fact. That's not an if and but or maybe about it. But in that sense is that it's way too beneficial, right? Corporations is technically being run right now based on just how the internet is being used. So they're not putting it back in the box. But I would like to say this. I feel like it makes you as a parent thinking about how fast technology is being pushed and what our kids should have access to. Because we're talking about a smartphone. Now, in this sense, I would say a child, I do believe a child need a phone for any form of emergency, right? Depends if your child is not with you. If your child is with you, there's something else. But parents, you don't have to get your kids, and I'm going to pause on this just so you can marinate. You do not have to get your kids the brand new Samsung phone or the brand new Apple phone because now you're forcing them to in those retrospect. You can get them one of those simple burner phones where all it does is make phone calls, you flip it, open, and that's all it does. But everything else is gonna be an issue. But I'm just gonna pause it, Jill. I'll let you continue.
No, I was gonna agree with you. It doesn't need to be a smartphone is really the what we're getting at here. Phones back in the day, I was talking to my aunt about this and she was like, yeah, but society is different now and this and that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Society is different now. I had a phone when I was like in 7th grade. I was like 13 at the time. And I don't disagree with, children needing phones, especially to keep in contact with their parents, right? Because at that point, it was shortly after my parents had divorced and my mom worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital. So if anything happened at school or if anything often where it's like I need to know who's picking me up from school, or should I take the bus, should I not take the bus, can I stay after school for an activity, do you have somebody that could pick me up, whatever the case is, right?
Mhm.
Anything that needed to be discussed, I could easily call her or text her. I mean, let's keep it real. At that point, it was like, do I use my minutes because I don't have free until 9 o'clock?
Yo, Janelle, back then the minutes was so important because I was like, yo, I don't want to talk to you because I don't want to run my minutes up, or I have to wait till like after 7, so my free minutes kick in. So there was just so much that you had obstacles you had to go over to make a lot of this thing happen. But I would say this, one of the things that the documentary did open my eyes to, which it is very big, and this is for me as a parent, is the fact that our kids is becoming less active,
Hmm.
right? They talk about the time frame spent on these devices and what's being and how they're being controlled by it. So when I started watching artificial intelligence, and I'm gonna say this, I'm a chess player, right? So I started being a little bit devious with the information that was given. So now on my Facebook, I make sure whenever I see a Biden or a Donald Trump what you call it, their posts about the election, I like it. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because before I I had a lot of Democratical friends, so I never really started seeing a lot of the Republican ads. And then the only time I'll technically see a Republican ad is when one of my Republican friends was like, "Okay, I'm passionate about this ad, like I'm gonna share it." So I was like, "Okay." So just to be devious, I started liking both of them, and you'll be surprised to see what pops up on my Facebook. I mean, it's funny to me because I like seeing both sides of the fences. I like seeing what Democrats are seeing and what Republicans are seeing, and it is so funny. It's like you're watching. You can sit there and watch two people find so many different things to nitpick off each other just by changing your preferences. And it goes to show you how much it's trying to tailor towards what your narrative is and why people get so lost in it, because um, a lot of people don't understand the whole analogy of Alice in Wonderland. The main thing about Alice in Wonderland is where it starts, when she started tumbling down the rabbit hole. And it took her so long before she can even recover, right? Now, when you go on these little binges or trends on the internet, it basically locks your mind into whatever possibility you're trying to own in for. And I'm gonna use the ladies for an example. If you go online and say you're gonna look for this dress, you ain't looking at one dress. And if you find the one dress, you got to find the color. Then after you find the color, you're like, you know what? That cut is not really. I may want a different style. And then you start realizing you're being engulfed for a whole another hour or two. Now let's take a look at how that affects your child. So there is so many aspects that you can look at from this. Now I'm gonna say this. I love sports, right? Obesity is becoming one of the biggest things that we're facing in humanity, not just America, because I want to make sure I address it that way, right? If you look at the push of obesity is based on the technology era, because you started realizing a lot of people, and I'm not saying this, I do, and I want to shout out to everybody, all my people who's posting about working out and doing their gym things, right? And saying, hey, like, you know what? I'm a workout fanatic. There's nothing wrong with being a workout fanatic, right? But in the sense that you find that there's you a generation of gamers has came out, and I'm not hating for gamers because I like playing video games myself. But you have guys and people who are sitting on the computer for more than 24 hours. They'll eat, sleep, and all they do is sit on a device that's locking them inside the house. And that's just a small spectacle of how far this thing has gotten. Now, my daughter uses a little thing that I just kicked her off of called Roblox. I think I've spoken about this before, and how Roblox is technically built for minors, right? And one day she went in there and she was like, "Daddy, what is this?" A bunch of Pornhub logos was inside of Roblox. There is no, they were not doing anything, but a store word Pornhub was sitting there on Roblox, right? Now, let's put this back in context. If you're a child who's seen that, what do you think you're going to want to put inside of a Google search bar?
Yeah.
Right? So when they're talking about regulation, regulation goes so far because even when you think that you're regulating it by, you know what? Oh, this is a child friendly environment. It's technically not because you can't tell how a pedophile, and I'm not saying I want to go back to this route, how somebody who, and I want I'm let's use a different word, somebody who is here to do harm, right? Because a pedophile is the same thing, but somebody who's there to do harm is now have loopholes and an interest into other people's life. And when you think about it's how it's being created, like the back doors are, it's not even like a back door. Like the back door is like a front door. It's like, guys, we're just gonna label it the back door, but you can just walk in it.
Yeah.
Like that is the craziest part about what I've learned on this journey, because I would say this, watching the documentary opened my mind, but it made me start realizing what information I'm being searched for and how to be used. And I would say this because now I'll be on YouTube watching the most random stuff. I think YouTube don't know what to do with me because like I like watching sports. I jump into my books, right? Because I watch Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. So I'll find that there are times I just don't want to listen to no sports. And there are days I just want to listen to some gossip. It may be, oh, gossip from this person, gossip from that person, or I may want to listen to something educational, or I may want to listen to a documentary. So going through my YouTube feed, YouTube is like, okay, what do you want to look at right now? And I'm like, YouTube, on the reality of it, you're not showing me what I want to see. I have to let me show you that I still got control, because what you're showing me technically at that moment is not what I want to see, because you don't know, because of how broad I'm trying to open this horizon. So when the doc, and guys, this is a spoiler alert, when they show that little section when they had those three guys trying to debate on what I'm trying to do at that moment, I'm not gonna lie, I would love to see what my little three people would look like, just so I can see, okay guys, all right guys, let's get this together, how are we gonna make my afternoon interesting? Like, if, and I'm gonna say this to all the corporations, like, if you talk to me, we can work this out. If you pay me a fee, I can tell you what to show me so I can buy it. Let's start from there, guys.
You know what was also pretty insane to me was how they're how the technology is trained to get you to come back onto the social media. Like, oh, let's just shoot him an email and tell him, a friend commented on something so he can come back on. And then once you come back on, you get stuck there like scrolling for how long and you're just wasting your time on it, right? That to me was just amazing. It's like, oh, let's send him a notification. I mean, okay, listen, I didn't have to watch this documentary for it to tell me how to act on social media because I have no notifications on for any social media. I have no notifications on for like any app whatsoever except for my text messages, and my emails and my WhatsApp, and obviously my phone itself. I don't do the notification thing very often unless it's a business account, that I need to keep up with and I need to, communicate with people wanting my service, right? Um, but yeah, I just think that it's amazing the way that they just keep people in the loop and like, oh wait, he hasn't been on for a few days, like let's send him something. And I've seen it as well in my email, like, oh, look, this person who hasn't posted in a while, like they said something, and then I guess that's supposed to make you go, oh, I wonder what they said. I'm not that kind of person. Like, I'm the worst person for these corporations to be paying for information on because, like, I don't ascribe to these things. Like, even with, oh, hey, let's show her ads on this stuff. Like, automatically, I have always been like this. And I used to get really irritated with people in the mall, like salespeople in the mall that would try to sell me things. The minute that I feel like you're selling me something or attempting to sell me something, like you're already blocked out. Like, I don't want to hear anything you have to say. You're just annoying me at this point. Like, shut up. If I want to buy something, I will buy it. Like, even when you go online and you're shopping, in a boutique or whatever, I think it's Forever. No, not Forever. maybe it's Fashion Nova. I don't know. One of those sites will literally be like, "Oh, hey, you left this in your cart. Do you want this? Come back to us. Come back on and buy it. Like, empty your cart." And like when I see emails like that or notifications like that, I automatically get turned off. Like, I don't want to go back onto your site now because you just pissed me off. Like, don't tell me what to buy. Don't try to sell me on something. If I wanted it, I would buy it. And if I needed it, I would buy it. So I'm just absolutely the worst person like to do something like that with. Like, it just annoys the crap out of me. And when I start seeing ads about something that I just spoke about, I immediately be like, I do not like this ad. I'm not interested in this ad. Cause it really just irritates me.
And
So
I can't say because it catches. You know when it catches me when I'm window shopping. There's nothing worse than window shopping for a little bit, and then you start flooding me with ads of something that I technically was trying not to buy. I was just looking at it for a minute, and you just kind of constantly give me that reminder. And I know what they're doing. They're running against the law of average. If you look at it enough, you're gonna push yourself into that realm, so you can want it. And I'm like, no, I don't like being forced to do anything I don't technically want to do. So I feel like that's what you're doing. You're forcing yourself upon me in that moment. And I would say this is where I guess I sympathize with ladies. You know what I mean? So for all you guys out there who like to force yourself upon women, just if you feel like the internet is forcing themselves upon you, imagine that and worse. Um, but I'm just that just so we can put that in context because that's exactly how I feel. Especially I'm on the gram and the gram will have some little things about jackets, right? And I was like, oh, and it's like you don't have to like the jacket. You can just stop and go, oh, that's a nice looking jacket. If I go with anything else, that jacket is popping up. Right, I'm like, yo, wait, I didn't even want this jacket though. And it caught me this morning because I I was looking for what you call is like an automatic steamer mop. Like it's basically it steams while you run it on the floor, right? And I was like, okay, me and my mom talked about it. Now every time I open my phone for the last 2 hours, it's showing me different variations of this mop, and I'm like, okay, bro, I got it,
I
I got it.
I like my money. If you try to coax me out of my money, I will not be pleased. So I'm not that person at all. I will completely ignore you. You will have pissed me off, and I will like close the phone and put it down because it's irritating me. Um, and even with things like that, like shopping and they're sending emails or they're putting ads up and stuff like when I shop online, which I do most of my shopping online for things that I specifically want, like if I go to a website it's because I want something, right? When I'm shopping online for anything, I will literally talk myself out of buying things. Like I'm on this site for a good week, like week and a half, just like, I have this in my cart, but do I really need it? Okay, I'll come back tomorrow and figure out if I want to buy this. Okay, tomorrow. Oh, well, I could have this. Let me try and get my, the cost of my cart down and see if I, want this. And then I'll come back and it'll be like, oh, darn it. It's sold out. Okay, I guess that wasn't for me. Take it out of my
And
cart.
I'm gonna say this, it catches me because even when I go online to shop, I don't really want to be the person who buys something for $100. I pride myself in the person who finds something for $20 that someone paid for $100. Like, look, you paid for 100. I got it for 20 right here. This is how we doing this. So it technically it's so hard to catch me because it's like for one, you're not gonna give me a deal, and I guess I got an old school island mentality. If you guys ever go to the islands, you can go to like some of the shops, and you can talk the price down if you know what I'm talking about. And that's a shout out to all my island people who go to like the iglas them if you know what I mean. Because I'll be out there talking the price down. He'd be like, okay, the shoes is like $100. So I'm gonna keep it real, bro. I came out here at 60. I like the shoes though. You know what I mean? If you feel like you want to let it go for 60, you say it costs $100, right? Yeah, can't do it. Can't do it. Are you gonna have to work with me? And I learned that and I'm gonna say that's an old school technique. People are being deprived of from social media, because now I can't look at the manager inside the store and be like, "Yo, bro, let me use the manager's discount." You know what I mean? Or where's my hookup? Where's my mall hookup? Like you guys don't understand how the mall hookup works. Do you know how great it is to have a mall hookup? To know that you're gonna something is in there that they're literally trying to sell you for an arm and a leg, and then after you get two employees discount plus the manager to come over and put his discount in, you're like 60% off. You're like, yeah, thank you. Or the privilege of, as I'm gonna say this, as a woman being escorted in the back of Charlotte Rouge to get to try your personal shoes on because you get to try them on before you pay for them, right? Look, you know what I mean? Sit there right in the mirror, check them on, and be like, okay, you know what? I like this. I like this. Now this is what you guys are limited to. You're gonna have to wait for this 3-4 day
I'm
shipping, I should say.
honestly, I'm not even I'm not knocking online shopping because if online shopping did not exist, I would not shop because I don't like them all. So, online shopping is just a part of what we're talking about here. It has made life that much easier. I appreciate it. I love it, but don't try to manipulate me. That crap just anyway.
So I mean, so it's basically, I guess the sum of this part is, guys, within this moment, especially watching the documentary, I wouldn't say to get off social media. I would say limit yourself and take the opportunity to educate yourself. So at least you can understand what's being fed into your mental soul, you know? And I'm using the word mental soul there for a reason because a lot of our actions that I want to say that people used to speak on nowadays is built off what they're seeing on social media. I mean, it's not even. I would like to say it's fiction, but it's pure facts, right? Like social media has now become the arbitrary, if I'm saying that correctly, of how we're using our information nowadays. But I guess that's the reason why I would say, guys, when we do this podcast and we talk about putting things in and out of context, it's for the fact that people got to understand if you don't go out and research some of your information, you're gonna get lost in the sauce. Please do not let social media, or I will say anybody else, because there's somebody created it, and as they say, it's a monster that's out of control. Don't let them dictate what you're being fed into. But I do want to pay some respect into some other topics, just to make sure, because I did know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. Very. I'm not sure how politically this will affect our country, but at the rate that they're fighting over it, it's been. I would say this. Guys, sometimes when political people fight, use it as an opportunity to educate yourself, not for you to pick sides. I want to
Um,
say that more so than anything else.
well, I want to start by saying rest in peace to this phenomenal woman who gave a lot of women rights or contributed to it. Um, I I just know that if you don't know who this woman is, you need to go and research her. Her life and her career has contributed a lot to the average woman in the United States. Um, and I've seen people on the timeline be like, "Who is this woman? I need to go figure out who she is." Like, yes, you do, because I think that it's important to know where we've come from and the people who have contributed to it. And I was extremely saddened, I think, in a different way than the average civilian out there at her passing, because I am aware of her, um, what her life meant, and I'm also aware of what her death means. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about that because I think people are kind of realizing that the country is up in arms right now over her death, and some people don't really understand why. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a Supreme Court justice. For those of you who don't know, Supreme Court justices are Supreme Court justices for their entire life. That appointment is a lifetime appointment until you either retire or die. So essentially what has happened is, we have, first of all, let me take you through a slight history lesson. Um, the current Supreme Court justices are John Roberts, who was appointed by President George W. Bush in 2005. We have Clarence Thomas, who was appointed by Bush. He took his seat in 91. So I full on read Clarence Thomas's, what's the word I'm looking for? I read his takes on Supreme Court cases when I was in law school, because he's been around, right? We have Justice Stephen Breyer. He was appointed by Clinton. He took his seat in 94. We have Justice Alito, Samuel Alito. He was appointed by George W. Bush, and he took his seat in 2006. We have Justice Sonia Sotomayor. She took her seat in 2009, appointed by Barack Obama. We have Justice Elena Kagan, who has been there since 2010 and was also nominated by Obama. And then we have the most recent Supreme Court justices who were both nominated during Trump's term, which means that Trump chose these two since he was elected in 2016, which is Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. Now, we all remember Brett Kavanaugh and the chaos that ensued when he tried to nominate him, right? So the problem here that, you know, the country is up in arms about is that now that Justice Ginsburg is gone, there's another seat that could potentially be filled by either Trump or the new president that will be elected in November. Now, historically, you know, it's been decades that there has not been a justice that needed to be replaced within an election year that was replaced by the sitting president. Usually it's left for the next president to choose if it's in an election year. There have been times where the sitting president chooses the person that will replace the justice, right? It's just rare. It doesn't happen often. And in fact, it actually was an issue when Obama was in office, where, you know, there was a justice that needed to be replaced, and essentially everybody said the same thing, like, hey, we usually wait for the next sitting president because this is an election year, it shouldn't happen. Now, everyone, including Republicans, took that stance because it was just common knowledge, you know? It's not like there's a rule or a law. It's just common knowledge that that was what people did, what the country did. And the context behind it is the reason that we wait for the next sitting president is because it is an election year. We as people should have more of a say in who will be elected to the Supreme Court and who will be elected as the president and who will be elected as senators. Now, the Senate has a responsibility to help, I guess, in the nomination process for the Supreme Court justice, right? So now that it's an election year, you'd want the election to pass so that the people, the US citizens, will have told us who we want as senators, who we want as the president, and then they can move forward and say, okay, this is who we want as Supreme Court justice, right? Now, the problem that we're seeing is that Trump and a lot of Republicans actually who were already saying that in 2016 that we should leave it for the next sitting president, are going back on that and saying that they don't want that we need to replace Justice Ginsburg right now. Now, the importance, I think, that a lot of people are missing as to why anyone cares who, you know, gets to replace this woman is the Supreme Court is the highest court in the country, which means that when you start a case out in state court, and then it goes to the Supreme Court, or through the appeals process, I should say. It goes from the state court to the Court of Appeals or District Court of Appeals in wherever you live, and then it goes to the Supreme Court of your state. And then once the Supreme Court of the state hears it and somebody decides, hey, this needs extra attention, it will go all the way up the food chain to the U.S. Supreme Court. So the U.S. Supreme Court is the one who's saying this law is okay and this law is not, and this needs to be changed. Like, this needs to go back down the line to this appeals court because they made a mistake in interpreting the law, or whatever the case is, right? So the U.S. Supreme Court has the last say in any situation that involves the law, and interpreting the law. Now, the justices are, just like any other judge, they're supposed to be nonpartisan. But essentially, you're not really nonpartisan because you're an individual. And that will come out in the way that you rule over cases. So currently, we have a Republican president who's already sat 2 new Republican justices on the Supreme Court. And like I said, I mean, it's not necessarily saying a Republican justice. They are supposed to be nonpartisan, but, he sat them there because he knows that they lean towards Republican. They lean towards his values, or the Republican Party's values. The same as a Democratic judge does with their nominees, because they lean towards Democratic practices, right? So currently, we're about to see another installation, if Trump is allowed to do what he wants to do, that is a Republican justice. Which means then that, as far as we know, Republicans lean towards the right, which means that they lean towards the individuals having, kind of less autonomy, which is why Justice Ginsburg was so important when it comes to women's rights, when it came to abortion, when it came to women's voting, when it, there was so much that one justice, or in this case 3 under his administration, can be responsible for leaning the law in the way that it they want it to go. So if we get another Republican justice on the Supreme Court, we're more leaning Republican at this point, which means that any case that goes up to the Supreme Court after that point, they will rule on it in a majority Republican way, right? This is why it's so important for us to have, I guess, equal Supreme Court justices, if that makes sense, or an equal number or amount. But that's not going to happen because the Supreme Court is not comprised of an even number of justices. So the problem now is whether the new justice is going to be a Democratic pick or a Republican pick. Now, the fact that this has been a norm for sitting presidents during an election year to leave it for the next president that's installed apparently means nothing to Trump because Trump says that he wants to move forward, and Republican, leader of the Senate, basically Mitch McConnell, has decided that he also would like to see Trump get the next pick to replace Justice Ginsburg. Ironically, he was also somebody in 2016 when Obama wanted or would have gotten the opportunity to replace a justice, to say that he should have left it for the next president that was coming in. So it's interesting to me that there are, all of these Republican senators who have in the past said that it should wait for the next sitting president are now saying that it shouldn't and that Trump should be the one to replace them. There are, however, certain Republican senators who have come forward and said, no, they're not going to vote on his picks, which as of right now are supposed to be about 5 women are who he's picked. And I mean, that doesn't really say much for me. It doesn't say anything to me to say that she's a woman, because we've already seen that there are plenty of women out there who would be okay with, repealing our rights, especially in terms of abortion. Republicans are generally known for being quote unquote pro-life and not pro-choice. And I say quote unquote pro-life because, you know, the only lives that apparently matter to Republicans in situations like this are the, you know, quote unquote baby, even though it's not an actual baby. The life of the mother, you know, a lot of times does not matter, even though people are pro-life. But you know, that's an argument for another day. The point is that Republican women cannot always be trusted to protect women's rights in the way that the majority of the United States, I think, would love to see it happen. So, although his pick is supposed to be another woman, I'm not super excited about it, and I don't think that he should be picking the next justice. I don't think that they should allow him to do it, but as I said, there is no law against him doing it. There's just, you know, unspoken rule. There's just you know, this is what we've always done.
And you know, not to cut you. I'm happy you said that because I do personally feel like the way they're rushing it, right? Is like they're afraid that they will not gain this opportunity again,
Well,
right?
according to Trump, the reason that he wants to make sure to replace Justice Ginsburg as soon as possible is because of election fraud.
Mm.
Essentially, you know, the Supreme Court is the one that hears situations when it comes to election fraud. Once it goes all the way up, you know, the poll, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be the U.S. Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
His argument throughout this entire thing has essentially been, you know, they're trying to steal the election and it's a scam and they're going to be sending all these ballots that are fake and, you know, people are going to be voting that shouldn't vote and, you know, all the quote unquote, you know, mail in, it's a hoax and blah, blah, blah. People shouldn't mail in vote. We've heard the arguments over the past few months, and I think this is really just him setting himself up for um, being able to go to the Supreme Court and say, "Hey, like, make me president," essentially. So the fact that he would like to get another Republican justice on the Supreme Court right now is kind of scary to me, honestly. The fact that he's claiming months in advance that uh, the Democrats are going to steal the election with fake votes and fake ballots and you know, all of what goes on in his mind. I mean, you know, the shadow people are probably involved too. Um, I'm just I'm just saying, like, I
The
just think
shadow people are always involved, you know. You know how that goes.
I just think that it's kind of scary and I feel like I like it's red alert right now. Like there's red flag, like flag on the play. Like I don't
Mhm.
know what's happening right now, but I feel like he's setting an argument up for himself and he's setting himself up in a way where, as I said, another Republican justice on the Supreme Court to vote his way. Um
I do strongly agree. I feel like in for at the rate that you're pushing, right? And I want to use the rate that you're pushing is for more security because a lot has happened in the last couple of weeks when it comes to his narrative. A lot of the people he votes for that votes for him, right? Especially when it comes to the angelic Christians of the United States of America, they for their personal belief, and I want to say their personal belief of certain laws that they do want to get passed. They want a strong conservative person in office, right? In that seat. And if Trump could deliver that for them, right, it will strengthen their narrative because lately they've been distancing themselves away from him. And I will say this: I think I've had this conversation before when I've said Joe Biden has tried his best to say less because he knows Trump will say more, right? Every time they ask him a question, he's like, "I don't really want to talk about it right now. I want to stick on this and coronavirus." And I feel like it's a safe area where they've left it. So I would say this in a sense. There's a greater plan. Mitch McConnell knows what the plan is. For the fact that he made a big deal about it during Obama's presidency, and then for him to come around and turn full like this, you already know that there's a plan. And it's a constant show that there's no more the bipartisanship inside of the White House is diminishing to a point where it's not even being used anymore. Social media is where it's all playing out, but you're literally seeing it. Before people could speculate what was going on. I want you to understand. Trump has taken speculation out of the White House and put factual information in, and I'll take it because as bad as it sounds, they're at their throats, and at least we know they're at their throats. Because when they're ready to scheme, we don't know anything that's going on. We just see the craziness happen, and they're like, "Wow, how did this thing happen?" But a lot to go there.
Yeah.
A lot.
And I mean, as of right now, like when Justice Ginsburg was alive on the Supreme Court, they Republicans had a majority, but it was a 5-4 majority. So essentially, if one person, were to go the other way, it would end up being, a tie, or it would be less basically that you had to sway, right? With a new conservative justice, the majority would go up to 6. So it would be 6-3 Republican majority, which is just, I mean, at that point you have there really is no swaying. It's just kind of we're gonna be led for the next few decades essentially by a Republican Supreme Court. Usually when the Republicans have a stronghold or a majority is when you see people losing rights, is when you see people having their rights taken from them. Rights are reversed in the Supreme Court with, certain cases. We've already seen a bunch of people. I mean, these are nut jobs, but they're for saying, hey, reverse Roe v. Wade. I can't imagine what it would mean to have cases go up to the Supreme Court with a 6-3 Republican majority and what the outcome would be.
It's a lot of swaying, and you're fighting a losing battle.
Exactly.
And I feel like that's the narrative that's being pushed. We keep hearing that the left is going left and the right is going right, but at the rate we're going, we're getting so dividing that I want to say this, guys. We're getting so divided that we're reaching a place, guys, that it's coming like it's going to be very hard to recover from. Back in the day, not saying we didn't understand politics, we knew what politics was. A lot of people now, I would say, based on the internet, because social distancing has shown that based on the internet, there's a vast information that's being led onto people. But for where we are now, there's no unity. Back then, it was like, okay, you work with me because I can work with you. Nobody's there at the point where we're just not working with each other. It's it's funny because it depends on who's in power at the moment is who's considered a crybaby, right, and who's considered a menace. And it all dictates about who's in power, because when Obama was in it, it came off as, Republicans are crybaby, they cry for everything. Now, Republicans in office, they say Democrats cry for everything. And I've constantly realized that the blame game is putting us in a place that we're not recovering from. Because if anybody has ever been into an argument, most argument don't end with people storming off. It's a good thing. It always gets to a point where it gets physical. And people have been shouting at each other long enough now where it's getting to the point of physicality, and we're seeing it play out in the streets, yo. Like on the real. Like, we're losing bipartisanship, and the places that we need to start in, we're losing it there.
Yep.
Like before, they will technically try to find someone bipartisan just to make sure that there's a balanced thought. Right? What is wrong with a balanced thought? The thought is there to be balanced. Right? Because it's either that way. If the thought is not balanced, you're just only pushing one narrative.
Yep. I mean, it's
You
really
know,
finding people who appeal to the moderates part of the scale. It's not. I mean, having people on the completely liberal side and having people on the completely conservative side is not going to do much for the country and for moving the country forward. You need that moderation. Um, so yeah, I think that we talked a lot because it was some heavy topics today. So,
mm-hmm.
next episode, I do want to pick up on some celebrity breakups that have been happening recently. I wanted to talk about it this episode, but I think we talked a lot.
Well, and I would say this, guys. I feel like as this breakup process goes on, right, more is going to become to the forefront because it will give it. I like giving everybody time to put stuff in context. We, as you can see, we went through this when Megan, Tori went through this thing because we wanted to talk about it, and given the time or pace, the information comes out because people yearn for the context, right? Because I heard Cardi be addressed it in one form or shape, but that will be in the next week podcast, guys. Again, guys, I'm gonna need you to hit the like button, share, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Peace. Go ahead, Janelle.
I was just going to remind everyone last week we were talking about the forced ICE hysterectomies that the ICE administration was making people undergo, immigrants undergo, detainees. We were also talking about a few police shootings that ended in police being murdered. If you have not checked that out, please go and check out last week's link. And yeah, come back next week for another juicy episode.
Yes, and guys, I'll just so you know, I wish you could see Janelle's reaction when I said peace. So I can say peace one more time. And guys, again, enjoy. Have a safe week.